All right, let's call to order this meeting of Finance Committee, Tuesday, March 28th. We do have a quorum present, and meeting has been certified to comply with open meetings laws.
Right.
Did get an email from Callie and Sarah at the chamber that they wanted to add something in the public comment at our committee meeting, but I don't see them here, so
I don't know if they noticed that it's at 6 instead of 5:30, so you may want to,
let's hold the public comment in reserve until it's the rare instance that we have public comments at it, so we'll keep that one open until they arrive in here, but otherwise we can get into the rest of our items at hand, because we've got a number of them. Communications, Dave, anything?
just a comment, we have gotten the plan trust document from the attorney working on it for the pension fund, so that'll be on next next Finance Committee meeting.
Okay. Anybody else have any communications? I have one off-topic one. If you go about 30 minutes after sunset tonight, you'll be able to see 5 planets aligned under the moon. So
I heard that on
about 30 minutes after sunset, you'll actually be able to see Mercury in this one too. Well, if you have some binoculars. Anyway,
Is that a motion to adjourn?
exactly.
I got a nice set in the truck, as you know.
That's right. You gotta have a clear west exposure, and then we'll climb up to the top of the Opera House, and maybe we can see them. Yeah, no big deal. That's it. That's my off-topic celestial event.
You know, just it's another comment off topic. You just mentioned the clock tower, up there, You know that during World War II, the civil defense, the women's civil defense
Yeah.
actually used that as a watch point for
Really?
Japanese aircraft.
They must have huge fuel tanks on them.
I guess so. My mom was one of them.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get through the reports, Dave.
Okay. There were several reports that I put comments in and read. Other than that, I didn't see anything that was noteworthy that I wanted to bring up, so I'm going to open up the floor to you folks. Do you have any questions on anything in the report or any of the comments that I made?
Just that I appreciate the comment.
Absolutely, yeah. That makes some things clear that may have otherwise been, we'd have asked about them.
Right. And some of the things are very weird, so it does help to have comments in there.
Can you
I know.
explain all those numbers to me?
Which numbers?
Any numbers?
Well, 1 + 1 is 2.
Right. We're going to go through number theory here.
Okay.
Yeah, the comments are definitely helpful in there, because I know as you're kind of shifting around some of the or fund structuring and things like that, that some things get a little bit odd. But
Right. I think a lot of the shifting is finished, although the pension fund will have to be moved from a special revenue fund to a fiduciary fund, but seeing as we don't really have much activity in the pension fund except for year end, it's not a big deal.
Right. And that one's more of we're going to put it from one box into a slightly different box. And
Correct, but that gives us some, it'll increase the net position for the city
okay.
because the actuarial firm can then use those investments in their actuarial projections.
They count for more than just stuffing it in a mattress then, right?
Right.
Got it. All right, and then, you know, by next year, all of this stuff will be all totally clear and smooth, right? Perfect.
Okay, that's kind of,
And then in 2 to 3 years, we have to implement the new
New gas
financial
meter.
statement standard, and so the financial statements that you're used to seeing are going to change.
but
Fantastic.
all of the, like the major changes that we did last year with the account, or with the accounts, you know, moving the accounts around, making that make more sense. There's no more of that on the horizon then for you.
I don't anticipate material changes like that. I think I've done a lot of things. One of the things that I'm contemplating is we've got 4 special funds for senior center. If Cindy's okay with it, I may combine it down to one fund, just to make reporting easier.
Is that the donation fund and?
Well, they've got one for the wood shop, they've got one for the town, what's the word I'm looking for? Town charges for assisting people, and then they've got another one for a special fund, and then they've got seniors in need.
Shouldn't they be separated out for those particular ones if there's money that's designated for that account?
It's kind of the same thing that we did for EMS, because the system can handle it, just like the general fund has many departments, but it can track them separately with no problem. Same concept with that. I just have a separate department
Give a second.
in BSNA for each one of them.
Within the account.
Right.
Okay.
Like putting folders within folders on Windows or something like that, similar to that.
Concept's the same, yep.
So, I remember when I was on cemetery board, we had a special account set aside for donations that were specifically for certain things. You know, some people put money in there that was
Right, the
designated.
Sisters Bailey have a fund there.
Yeah, yeah.
But, and I haven't worked with the Public Works Department to get more detail, but I think we're combining multiple things there and in the general fund, so
Yeah. When I
I'd
was
like to
on there,
clean that up a bit.
I think just for your FYI, we were having a problem at that time even finding out if there was any relatives left in that family that would even care, and to try and get permission to combine that, take that money out of there and put it into the general fund for the cemetery.
Okay.
So I don't know if they wanted to continue that, because I think the cemetery board's been disbanded, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think that's something we need to look at.
Okay.
I think there's plenty of Baileys around. I got a couple I can,
They had a special fund set aside. They gave, I don't know, was it $10,000 or something, or whatever it was?
It's now like 35,000.
35,000 with the interest. and
Something like
everything.
that,
Yeah, and it
yeah.
was for perpetual flowers. But it's like one grave. I mean, it's just been piling up and piling up. And
right?
so we were trying to, at that time, the secretary was trying to find relatives, and to my knowledge, of what I remember about it, they couldn't find anybody. So they didn't know what to do with it, and I guess then we would have to ask the lawyer, what can we do here?
Right.
We have to send out a letter or send out, what do we have to do to get that money to collect it, to put it into general fund for the cemetery fund?
And yes, that's obviously something we'd ask Matt's opinion on,
Yeah.
but just thinking out loud, if we would do a Class 3 public notice, which is basically 3 separate publications in the newspaper, to at least state that we're attempting to do something. But Matt would be the expert on that one, of course.
Just a thought.
Okay. Yep, something to come up. All right, anybody else want anything gone through in the reports at all? We're still early in the calendar year, so
Yeah.
plenty of time. All right, then move into the business at hand, and I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 14th meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Ozzy, is there a second?
Second.
By Greg. Any edits, changes, anything? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And are any opposed? All right, minutes are accepted. Next up is the ordinance to amend section 2-585 of Stoughton's Code of Ordinances relating to apportionment of room tax revenue. I wonder if,
They wanted to speak on that particular topic at public comment, so I'd suggest that we delay this till after
Right.
public comment.
any objections to delay that until public comment? All right, let's then move to item 10, the resolution to amend 2022 budget for departmental deficits.
We could do 9 if you want.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Discussion possible action.
All right, we're moving back to 9, then we're going to do the discussion and possible action regarding delinquent room taxes.
Well, believe it or not, True by Hilton hasn't paid their fourth quarter yet,
Weird.
and they haven't paid their penalty from second quarter. Well, I sent them an email out because Ford Development Group, which in some way is either owned or part of the affiliation of who owns True by Hilton, and I sent the letter out, or the email out, saying with projections, they owe us about $52,000 at the end of March. So it's not insignificant dollars.
Right.
So with that said, I wanted to get conversation rolling here to see what you want us to do. Estimated quarterly billing, the statutes allow us to do that. And if I was going to bill them on a quarterly basis, I'd bill them at a higher amount than what it may be. But as Lisa in my office pointed out, even if I bill them quarterly, that doesn't guarantee that they're going to pay us quarterly. And so I can do that billing, but then there's more work on our part because there's reconciliations. But I guess I'm looking to you as a committee to see if you want us to do that. And then that kind of goes in hand with item B, the implementation of a required deposit. There's nothing in the state statute on room taxes that would allow us to require a deposit. But seeing as Ford Development Group wants to get a zoning change, this may be the time to get a contractual agreement that they are going to give us a deposit. Just off the top of my head, just for conversation, their largest month has been $38,000, or $31,000, excuse me. And maybe we want to ask for $40,000 or $50,000 just to have something there. But again, I wanted to put that out to you folks on the committee. Is that something that you're interested in potentially pursuing?
And this would be just with this entity alone.
Correct. The other entities are doing things on a timely basis. They might be a few days late.
Sure.
I'm not concerned about it. But this particular establishment has a pattern of being delinquent.
Right.
And they're our largest hotel, so it exasperates the problem.
I mean, there I would just say, whatever things that we can do to get them to reinforce that, hey, you need to do these things in a timely manner, do whatever is possible to it, because they keep not doing what they should be doing.
So I guess, are you referring to the deposit, or are you referring to the estimated billing amounts?
The estimated billing amounts, if that's gonna put too much work into your department, then,
I don't
it's-
think it'll add any benefit to us per se.
no, it seems like yelling into the void.
Right.
Or so, I don't know about that one, but I mean, to work on deposits or, you know, the item C in here, if these are the tools that we are allowed to use.
Well, item C, we are allowed to use, and we did that last year, and they actually paid their delinquent room taxes by credit card because they wanted their liquor license.
Right,
And our ordinance does state that we don't give out licenses until all outstanding receivables. So we've
Right.
got that in hand. I'm assuming I'm going to have to do that again, but the liquor license is only issued once a year.
right.
True.
So Brett, if we were to pursue a contractual deposit agreement, do you have a dollar figure that you'd be looking for?
What do they contribute in, or what are they collecting annually? Wasn't that like the 108?
Well, the 108 is everybody.
Oh, yeah,
They average, based on the last 4 quarters that I have numbers for, they average 22,000 a quarter, so that's 88,000 a year by themselves.
I mean, I would say based on what their pattern of delinquency in this case is, at least 50% of that amount, I think is fair. I mean, until you're like, it's not your money. Why are you keeping it?
Well, that's the thing, it's money that they've collected, and they're just using the money, that's what gets
Exactly.
me. So,
Correct, they've got it, they're using it for their cash flow.
right, and
One of the things they suggested is they have a hospitality company that manages the hotel, and they're trying to claim that that's a separate entity.
Which it is, but I think they've got different ownership groups, and who owns the hotel is different than who owns, you know, one plot of land for development, but I think they're all related somehow.
They've never really disclosed that to us.
And what's the max you think would be reasonable, given the time that it's taken you and your, staff to do this over and over again?
I guess I was thinking probably 25,000, because if they're averaging 22 a quarter, we've got one on tap there. I guess I'm just trying to put some teeth into it. It's like, if you don't start complying, you're going to have to give us 25,000 that we're going to sit on.
Yeah,
Right.
We'll earn the interest income. They're not going to.
right.
It's almost like a earnest money kind of, sort of,
Yeah,
right?
Yep.
security deposit,
I'd be
whatever,
comfortable
whatever.
with that, and
Yeah,
if you
for
felt
sure.
like
Mhm.
more was
A quarter's
necessary,
worth, I think, is reasonable.
you know.
If you build them quarterly, you'd probably be going for that same amount then, 25,000 a quarter.
I'd probably go higher if I was going to bill them quarterly, because they've got their largest month was 31,000. So I'd probably do 35 to 40.
Yeah.
But again, just because I send them a piece of paper with the bill, they're not paying it right now anyway, so I don't know what that would accomplish.
25,000's at least a starting point for
Yeah.
a dollar figure. I'd be
penalty doesn't seem to affect them at all, so
No,
we should raise that some more, get their attention.
Well, with the last change to the ordinance, instead of maximum 5,000 per year, it's now 5,000 per quarter.
I think what we need to do too is, if the liquor license has produced the result we want, I think we maybe need to look at that ordinance and see if it's possible to change that so that we could hold that over their head for the entire year. If they're not paying up, then, okay, we can withdraw the liquor license from them.
So revoke it.
I'm not sure that we can or not, but I
Right.
think it's something we can look at.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and
Well, the renewal is in what, June?
Yep,
But to your point, Greg, it would be more effective if it was not just once a year, but anytime they're in arrears, they lose their,
Long-
after X number of weeks or
As
days
long
or
as, as
whatever.
long as they know that, if do it something like, okay, if we have to penalize them, if, we're gonna hit them with interest, that's the point, it gets added on. You lose your liquor license once we have to start adding interest.
Yeah, I think we'd want to talk to the city attorney about
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah.
we don't want to get into a revocation hearing.
Yep, yeah,
Right.
that would be my fear. 'cause you'd
Their late
have
fee
a
would be
revocation.
gone like that.
Yeah, you'd have a revocation hearing every time, unless we can do it some other way.
I mean, technically, if they owe us, then they're not in compliance with the
Technic-
issuance.
According to the statutes, they've got till the end of the month after the quarter ends. So May 1, they'll be delinquent for first quarter.
Right,
Just like fourth quarter, they became delinquent February 1. And they're paying us 12% interest, and the penalty is now 25%.
But they're not paying the interest.
Plus our time to talk about it here,
right.
True. So,
which is the most irritating of all.
That's right. I agree.
so between the two, yes, they're looking at 37% that I'm charging them. Well, I guess the 12%'s per year, but the 25% is right on the total. So, yeah, I'd rather not do all these things, but they're not complying.
Right, and we don't wanna have to recreate our entire ordinance structure based on, because
Just
somebody
one,
won't
yeah.
get what they're supposed to, so.
Prefer not to.
Right, but, at least at this stage, because we're all tired of talking about this, that whatever tools that we can use to get what we should be getting, use them,
Well, it doesn't just affect us either, it affects the
right?
visitor services, it actually affects all the businesses, because that money is used for marketing of our community, and if we don't have it, it's
Yep,
kind of hard to cash flow for,
Big amount of money.
yeah.
yep, for sure. So, at least from the group, I'd say, at least a quarter's worth
Okay.
would be reasonable.
Thank you. I can at least keep that in mind as we're getting into negotiations with them.
Sure. Is that about what you need to do? Is that enough guidance on that? or-
I believe so, yeah. I don't think we need a motion. I just put, by consensus. We may never need to go to it, but,
I hope not, but,
yeah. Okay,
all right.
did you want to jump back up to
Yep.
public
We're
comment?
gonna go back to public comment. Chamber, you're up.
Sorry, I have
No
some
worries.
stuff on my
No
calendar.
worries.
Is it 5:30?
Yes, but
Yeah,
that's
it was-
okay.
We switched
My
it on.
apologies.
Not a problem.
Usually
right.
it is 6, though.
Usually
Today it
6,
started
right.
early.
I'm not totally wrong then. All right. Have my timer going?
We're not timing you. Go for
You
it.
get 3 minutes. We know you're gonna.
All right, with consideration to the city of Stoughton keeping on the potential allocation of 30% room tax revenue, and thank you to Dave for obviously all your hard work and getting all of it in, as well as the communication on where this topic is going. On behalf of the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce and Department of Visitor Services, I would like to bring forward a few points that will help educate you on the effect that this may have. The Chamber is a member-based organization. We are not a city department, therefore we are not recipients of city funds or benefits. Visitor Services spends only room tax dollars on marketing efforts and coinciding operations and administrative expenses. It is not supported by membership or sponsorship dollars. The Department of Visitor Services in the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce has been a 30% role. This has increased just in 2023 to 40%. This portion of the role is supported 100% by room tax revenue. You've seen me on the 30% roll. You've also seen me on the 70% roll of Chamber. The employee of Visitor Services shares the other, now 60%, as a Chamber representative working on Chamber-sponsored events, Community Expo, Set Namai, Chamber Golf Outing, Coffee Break Festival, Wine Walk Festival, or wine walk and children's business fair. Time and talent have changed this role dramatically in the past few years, which has moved to the Chamber of Commerce to look at its future with the opportunity for growth in both positions. With the increase of True by Hilton in 2022, and now the room tax percentage increase, I had forecasted the opportunity that marketing efforts of Visit Stoughton would need to change, and this was back in October of last year. In January, a proposal to the Department of Visitor Services Commission included seeking a strategic plan by the end of 2023, which would support rebranding efforts to continue to push Stoughton as a destination, attract investors for a conference facility for the community. Many of the groups will not stay in Stoughton or stay at local hotels because there's not an adjoining facility to meet at. Wedding business is thriving and will only grow with the availability and resources that Stoughton presents. With that, I've created a wedding guide for the past 3 years to increase wedding business to the community. And weekday usage for area large businesses to conduct meetings and off-site retreats. With the potential of extra work, networking, marketing, and facilitation in visitor services duties, the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce has started earlier this year putting together ways to bring on additional help to present to the board at fall budget time. Loss of that 20% will greatly deteriorate that opportunity, which will hinder marketing actions from the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce and Department of Visitor Services. We are getting to a really exciting time with the Chamber and reaching the point of having sustainable funds available to support this. If the city moves forward with the proposed as it is presented, it would hinder us from being able to answer that common question of, you need help in activities that produce Chamber events and support Stoughton businesses and Stoughton as a destination. We are open to the opportunity if there are alternative share options with the City of Stoughton and the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Sarah too, or no? No? Okay, fantastic. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, with that, now we can go back into item 8 and look at that ordinance to amend that section of 2-585 Code of Ordinances relating to apportionment of room tax revenue.
As a just reminder, when we being the Common Council adopted the change from the room tax from 6% to 8%, the city attorney brought up the point that we could potentially change the reimbursement from 90% to 70%. At last meeting, it was the consensus of the committee that you wanted the ordinance drawn up showing that change in percentages. So while this only talks about the change from 90% to 70%, one thing you want to keep in mind is that that's a lower percentage on the income that's going up by 33%. So the redlined document for the ordinance is showing what the city attorney is recommending for the language, and then we've got the spreadsheet PDF copy that we had looked at last meeting, just showing the estimated change in percentages to still maintain approximately the same dollar amounts for both Stoughton Visitor Services and Stoughton Chamber of Commerce, but giving additional approximately $54,000 to the general fund, which we need to then use for economic development expenditures, which we already are doing. So I will let the committee take over.
All right, so at least on that document shows what we're talking about here. So even though that percentage, the percentage appears as though it's dropping by the 20%. However, because there's a larger amount available, that is offset, so there's really no change that's, I mean, it would still be an increase. Even though we've changed the numbers behind the scene, the values are staying at least the same or increasing.
Assuming that we stay at the same level of room taxes.
Right.
If room taxes go down, that affects everything else and all numbers change. But had to make some assumptions going through here. But
Right.
I had made the assumption when I did this 3 weeks ago, whatever the spreadsheet was, that it was the intent of the committee not to have those two other agencies lose dollars.
Right. Lisa?
Yeah, so I was just gonna say that, but we also, I believe, as a committee, wanted to look at this pretty regularly because we wanted to be clear that the projections that we thought would be coming in are, and that, again, that the visitor services and chamber are not losing funds. And in fact, if there was a specific project, I think we wanted, that's why we wanted that to keep an eye on that general fund that's coming from there, so that if there is a special project, that's certainly not off the table. So.
Right.
So just talking out loud for a minute, assuming that the ordinance is changed like this, probably what I would do is, Tim and I would probably talk about a dollar amount, but just for conversation, we might say, okay, 25,000 we're going to earmark for economic development special projects or something like that. So we've got something in the budget for it. I haven't talked to Tim about this subject at all, unless the ordinance changes. It's kind of a moot point, but I can build something into the budget and to that effect.
So that it's not just swallowed into the general fund. I think that was my hope. And I think
Yeah, I think it has to
agree
be,
with that.
does it have to be earmarked for economic development? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and we could do that in a number of ways. We could do it by, paying one of our consultants that we use for anything that's not TIF reimbursable. So if they do anything outside of TIF, we could choose to turn around and give it to visitor services if we wanted to. I mean, that would still be an option if we didn't have any other needs. I don't know if, you kind of assume it would be sustainable, so if we wanted to, bring somebody on staff part-time, maybe we could consider that. I don't know if we'd find anybody. That would be something we'd talk about at budget time, as far as a staffing request for something like that. So there's a few different ways, and I think what Dave and I would do is we'd come back maybe with some options around budget time about, what we consider doing with it and kind of see what's going on. At the time, we could, certainly the RDA would take it. That would be another option, but ultimately it would be up to the council at budget time. So if there wasn't any other need for it, we could turn around and give a lump sum, in the budget, back to visitor services. It's just, for them, the uncertainty of knowing whether or not they'll get it or not, it really doesn't put them in a position to have a sustainable position if they're looking to add staffing, which I can tell you just from being on the board, capacity is becoming an issue because there's so many good things going on right now, and really participation is up, membership is up, participation at our events like, the ribbon cuttings, the lunch and learns, the business after 5, as well as, the normal cent to my coffee break, those types of events are all up, which is really encouraging. I think people are really excited about the work that's being done down there. So I think, for them, for budgeting, it would be kind of difficult. They might be able to do it. They do use some outside services for some of their marketing as well. So if we gave it to them in a lump sum, I'm sure they would find a way to reinvest it. Ultimately, with visitor services, I consider it the gift that keeps giving. because they're, basically what Callie's trying to do is put heads in beds at the hotel, so any money she receives, she's gonna invest it, and hopefully more people will stay in the hotels, and it'll just keep kind of revolving back to the fund, is kind of how it works. So now that we're kind of, hopefully, post-pandemic for good, we're seeing, ticket sales at the Opera House and wedding venues and those types of things, being more consistent than they were in the last couple of years. So we'll do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't want any of them to make it like a backstop in there, so that there definitely is no decrease in that in there. And but I can see their point too about being able to look forward and being able to have sustainable sources in there rather than having to come in and do a dog and pony show all the time for whatever it is that they want to do. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I see it as economic development money, and, again, if there's something on the wish list that, if we had this is how it would be spent, that's all part of economic development. So I think a lot of things are on the table. So I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, and I think the other option that Callie suggested is, it doesn't have to be one or the other on the chart here. You could go somewhere in between too if you wanted to.
Sure.
And then you could come back and look at it on an annual basis. We're hoping that we're going to be able to add, some bed and breakfast, and, someday there may be another hotel as we develop, but, that's kind of out there in the future. But, it doesn't have to be one or the other, I guess, is the point.
Correct. I backed into the numbers on the spreadsheet at 30%. If you wanted it at 25% or 20%, I can do the same type of analysis for you.
And it's based on the cost of the room, so if rates go up, the collections go up as well. Is that how it works?
Correct. So the state rate for years was $72. Now it's up to about $90. So for those, that's, I guess, a poor example because there's no room tax for state rate people. But yes, it would be using the old rates, 6% of 72 versus 6% of 90. So yes, the revenue goes up as inflation goes up.
So it's based on the individual hotel rates?
Correct.
Okay.
Whatever the rate is, and hotels have different rates for everybody. They may have corporate clients that get a 10% discount. They may have walk-in customers who pay the full rack rate. AAA, I know, gets a rate discount, so, it's all over the board. So, but yeah, as prices go up, room tax revenue goes up just like sales tax would.
I mean, as far as numbers or how we parse all this out on here, I mean, it's ultimately all going into the economic development regardless.
Correct. Whether
Whatever
we
entity
spend
is
it
doing
or
it.
whether they spend it, it's still
Right.
economic development.
I mean, I'd be okay if we had it, if we had 20% going into the general fund and then split that up among the other groups. That's my thought on it. But we'll see what does everybody else think about that. I mean, again, it's all going to the same thing ultimately.
One way or another, it's all going to the same thing. I'd be
Right.
fine with that.
Dave, any thoughts on that? All right. Lisa,
Nope,
No issue.
I'm fine with that.
Greg,
What?
any thought on it?
No. I agree. I think, so we need to, I don't know, I just think we need to keep an open mind on it and keep our options open so that we can make adjustments when they're necessary. And other than that, I
Yeah.
don't have a problem with it either way, whatever we decide.
And we can set it so that maybe we make an annual review of it before budget times, probably.
I would say
before-
probably in this committee prior to formulation of the next year's budget.
Right,
We're not gonna have a lot of data for this year.
not for this year, I mean, this
But-
year, we can set it, and then, we can kind of monitor the data as it's going along.
I'd recommend that you do the monitoring in July, maybe August, because the mayor and I would have to know what numbers to use as we're developing our budget.
Got it?
My only question is, you had mentioned, some economic development and perhaps needing some services from Gary Becker. I mean, I'd be interested, I'd like to know your thoughts is, would you have a little more wiggle room if it was 15,
It really kind of
split it 15-15?
depends on the year. I mean, this year, the work that we're having them do, you might recall at budget time, there was a request to do some work, and it was mostly RDA related, on kind of the Depot Hill area, and I really didn't feel like we were in a position to acquire more land anyway, so I really kind of eliminated it, their budget request for that. Most of the work that he is doing right now is TIF reimbursable, so he's doing some work with Dave on the TIF districts that we're going to either amend or create, because we can recover his expenses through the increment, so it really isn't a budgetary item. So I anticipate that's a lot of the work he'll be doing. Katrina has also been doing some work. Some of hers is a little bit outside of just the TIF related. She's working with some of the downtown businesses, trying to find out whether or not there's any grant opportunities available for them. Going forward, some of that work, she may end up doing that kind of independently with the individual business owners, and maybe or maybe not necessarily with the city. I think that would be the type of direction I would be looking for at budget time, how you want to handle that. There's pros and cons each way. Obviously, if the city funds it, the businesses are happy because they don't have to write the check. If the businesses are going to engage with them, then obviously, it's kind of between them, and then they can make sure that, they're making good use of their time, and, if they're paying for it, they have skin in the game, so they'll probably be a little bit more focused, but, they're doing good work, so I think we're fine for this year, but I think that as we get closer to budget time, I would probably look at what is submitted through the RDA and what they have going on their plate, and where we are in relation to creating these TIFs. Hopefully they're amended and created by then.
Brett, what was your thought?
I thought set, general fund percentage at 20. So, in the middle.
Fine with that? So, yeah.
All right. Ben, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think general fund is the way to go.
Okay. All right, do we want to move that ahead?
Well, I guess
or-
that's the question. Do you want me to recalculate at 20%? Or do you want to recommend approval to council at 20% and then just provide the numbers at that time?
I think that would be reasonable,
Yeah,
I'm fine with that. Let's get it
yeah.
That makes sense.
moving, keep it moving.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you can look at the chart and probably figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's
just
not too
update
bad,
it.
yeah.
Probably what I will do then is have a chart showing 10%, 20%, 30%.
Sure.
Just so everybody can see the difference.
Okay. And
I
yeah,
guess
it's
I-
an ordinance change, we gotta have 2 reading on it anyway, so.
Yep.
Correct, and I did not put this through council tonight because I didn't want to make it look like it was trying to be rushed through.
Yep, okay. All right,
So
nope,
we
I think that's diligent.
We'd need an amendment then, right?
That does mean,
For tonight.
it does create one issue though then, because you're gonna have the new council that's gonna be voting on it. And for me, I always have a problem with that because the new council is obviously not gonna have all the information. They're gonna be relatively.
There will be some newbies, you're correct.
Yeah. I mean, probably what I'll do is with the new council members, assuming that we get 2 write-ins and they're sworn in, is I'll probably debrief them both on at least the first couple agendas anyway.
Yeah.
So I can, if they're available, do a one-on-one or a Zoom and at least walk them through it, or I can have Dave walk them through the finance stuff if you would rather do that. We'll get them up to speed. They don't have a choice.
There's only a few items that are bridged in there, but I agree. I mean, it's difficult to, let it out of someone's hands and into somebody else's hands.
Somebody else.
And they're like, hey, I don't want to say anything about it.
Greg, what you could do is waive the rules at the April 11th to waive the second reading.
Do the second reading and do
That's
it
true.
at that point, then
Right.
save that particular issue.
Correct.
So do we need an amendment for tonight
That makes sense.
on the recommendation to
Yeah.
council to 20%, or just introduce
Just-
it with the 20%?
Just introduce
Yeah.
it as
I
an
think introduce it at 20%. I haven't given council anything on it, so between Rick, Manthe, and myself, we'll make the adjustment, assuming that the committee agrees with it, or votes to it, I should say.
All right, to a vote then.
So you need the motion?
Correct. We do not have a motion yet.
Oh, come on. Technicalities. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance with the 20% for the general fund level.
So moved.
Second.
All right, are there any other questions on that?
And that's a recommendation to council.
Yep. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
And are any opposed?
Aye.
All right. We'll put that one forward. Okay. Next bit up we have, okay, now we can go into the resolution for amending 2022 budget for departmental deficits.
Okay, something you folks haven't seen before, but what we should be doing each year is making sure that the departments don't go over budget. And so this is kind of standard practice in government where we just say, okay, these departments were over, whether they had a deficit or whether they had expenditures over budget but had revenues to offset those. It basically gives a real brief explanation, 1 to 3 sentences per each department, which is a real brief summary of that, but I tried to find the highest areas that made each department going over budget. And then for those of you who didn't see it, I emailed an updated one early afternoon today. Working with the auditors yesterday, we determined that we did not have to have TID number 6 transfer 268 or 286,000 to the debt service fund, so that changed numbers quite a bit. So I gave the new document, the one that you have in hand, and the one that we'll make sure is displayed on the screen at council will be with the new numbers. So,
Something that was flagged by the auditors?
no, this is something that was flagged by myself. It's standard practice in governmental. But we haven't done it in the past, but we're going to make sure that we do it going forward.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because I don't remember ever having them give us that information before we had this issue.
Correct, and we had a lot this year, which made for a very long resolution. Some of them are pretty small, though, because if you look at Table 1, for instance, know, like the mayor, 0.2% over budget. Police department, 0.4% over budget. You know, we're not talking, you know, large things, but we still should be following the Wisconsin statutes and making sure that the departments aren't going over budget. So this is kind of a housekeeping item after the fact to correct it.
Seems like a lot, though. When I was looking at this, it was
For
pretty
the-
stunning when I, looked at the
The number?
total number. Is that?
It's
based on
higher than I would like to see. Part of the problem is that when I discovered that the wage accrual was half a month off, so December basically had 3 payrolls instead of the normal 2, that threw a lot of my projections as I was looking at things off. And I think part of it too is that departments haven't been used to trying to stay within budget. It's like, oh, for instance, the K-9 fund. They did a special push to get, and I believe his name is Odin, and so they got almost 18,000, 20,000 in donations. Oh, we're going to spend that. Well, technically, it's not in the budget. You know, so that's just a housekeeping item to clean up. Or like the library council, the library board said, yes, you can go over your budget, you know, dig into fund balance. But then you have to amend the budget to do that. So it's just dotting the i's, crossing the t's to stay within the statutes. So I'm going to open up the floor to you folks. Do you have any questions on the process, on specific departments, anything I can answer?
TID 8's kind of an eye popper.
Pardon me?
TID 8's kind of a tip.
Yes.
TID 8, that's an eye popper.
Actually, the one that caught my mind more than anything was what am I looking for? Opera House. The Opera House had, and let me find the table. They had a deficit of $165,000.
Yeah, and I think if you remember, at one point, the Opera House made an ARPA request because they were anticipating having a deficit. And that's why they made the ARPA request. So I'm not too surprised by it, but I think that, you know, based on what I'm seeing coming up in future shows, things are getting back to normal there.
Good.
But yeah, they kind of got off to a slow start this year. But things have picked up here in the last month, and it looks like it's going to finish off strong.
Good.
So I assume then departments get a budget every month, right? A report or something, or not? Like, how do they know? It's like, oops, you
Well,
can't buy that right now.
my department does not issue reports on a routine basis. If anybody asks for them, we'll give them out. That's one of the reasons why for the Finance Committee, I give, right now it's 5 department budgets to you folks every month so that you see it. We have some departments who will delve into the budgets, run reports themselves. They look at things in detail. Others don't seem to touch BS&A software or G&L software very often. So I know when I was at Dodge County, Baker Tilly was our audit up there too, and they wanted to make sure that the oversight committees had the financial reports at least quarterly. We haven't gotten to that yet. You know, I've been trying to get some cleanup, get people comfortable with the system, but I honestly don't know if some departments look at the detail at all.
I appreciate the paper copy.
Right. I mean, I guess to make the adjustments, we have to make the adjustments because they're real. So
Correct. I've seen, in this case, it would have been county boards, you know, they're like, well, we're not going to approve this. And it's like, the money's already been spent. You know, you can not approve it, but it still doesn't change anything.
Change it, right?
But yes, in a perfect world, if we have the payroll accruals functioning correctly, which I believe we do now, the departments should be able to see, you know, September, October, maybe November, it's like, okay, yeah, we got a problem. We got to get some extra revenue or cut down on expenses. Conversely, they may say, ooh, I've got extra money. Now I can buy that widget maker.
So is this going to come out of general fund?
Yes, it comes out of general fund. If you want to look at the last page, that 217,000 does come from the general fund unassigned balance. But then if you look at the next box, which was added onto this document and not the one that went into the packet, the general fund, including all these monies that went out, went up by $881. So we basically broke even, which is what we really want to do. So yes, that's not counting any surpluses because, for instance, city clerk had a surplus. So, you know, that kind of offsets the 217,000, but you didn't need to do a budget amendment for her on the surplus side. She went over budget on expenditure side because of the DS 400s that we purchased. But all in all, she provided money to the general fund, her department, I should say.
So it's kind of a break even.
Kind of a break even. That's usually the question that everybody asks. It's like, okay, yeah, we're putting 200,000+ into the departments. Where did the general fund end up? Bottom line is going to stay about the same. Now, the categories for assigned, committed, restricted, we've got to go through that yet, but the bottom line is we came out about the same.
We didn't leave much on the table, did we?
No, we didn't.
That's efficient budgeting.
Well, I honestly, I've never seen it that close
That's pretty
for
good.
a,
Yeah, that's really
Pretty tight.
yes.
Right. All right, and then, so for preventables, that we don't have to do this omnibus kind of thing here, are these things, Mayor, chime in on this too, are these, I know I'm watching the clock too, we got a few more things.
Yeah.
That can the directors be, I mean, I know that some of them are, Dave said, some are comfortable in delving into those details and some are not comfortable doing that.
Yeah, what we talked about is a couple things. One is Dave providing some training on the BSNA software.
Sure.
The other thing we could do is we could talk about doing quarterly or monthly reports or whatever we think would be helpful to the department heads so they can monitor it. I think for the most part, they kind of know, and they usually give us a heads up, especially if it's something that is an anomaly. You know, if something came up where, you know, a piece of equipment broke and they just have to buy it, or, usually if it's a staffing thing, we know that right away, and we have some rationale behind it, and we bring that to personnel, and we figure out a way to make sure that we have enough funds to cover it, which in this case, you know, we're in the black, not by much, but, we don't want to just keep adding money to the fund balance either. I mean, I think we
Right.
have a healthy fund balance. We want to maintain that for our borrowing, and so we get the best credit score, but it's good to use the money. You know, that means that, people are, for the overall, they're holding themselves accountable, and we're paying people as much as we can pay them to keep them here. So I think that's a positive. But there are some things we could do internally to monitor this. I know some of the groups, even the Opera House, they meet monthly. They talk about their finances on a monthly basis. So they're in tune with what's going on here.
Okay. Yep, like I say, I'm not saying that they absolutely must meet monthly or quarterly or
And if there's
whatever's comfortable for
something that you want here, you can think about it, let us know how often or what you'd like to see.
them. Sure.
It can be as simple or as complicated as you all want.
Simple's better, not creating too much work.
You know, and then how often would you want to see it, I guess, would be the question. Do you want to see it monthly or quarterly? Monthly's almost too much because things
Yeah,
kind of
monthly's a lot.
carry over. Quarterly or biannually, I don't know what works out the best.
I'd even lean toward biannual.
Yeah, I can inundate you guys with numbers, there's no
Yep.
doubt about
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
I guess I would suggest, as you kind of digest this, if there is a department that you're interested in seeing, whether it's routinely at finance or if you just want to, and I'm just spitballing here, you may say, okay, we've reviewed these 5. Next month, we want to look at, and I'm just going to pick a department at random, city clerk. And, okay, next one, let's see how EMS is doing, following month fire or something. I don't know if it has to be structured. It's kind of wherever you folks have a desire to look at.
Makes sense.
yeah, maybe it's one of those where the ones that are a little bit more random or have a tendency to overrun, maybe we look at those early in the fiscal year, and then the ones that come out pretty much dead even with their budget, we're not quite as worried about where they're gonna be with it. Look at those later in the year. I don't know, we could set something up. Greg, you have an
Well,
idea?
yeah, well, just thinking, I mean, it would make sense that the standing committee that oversees that department, such as, Public Works,
Sure.
would be the one that would take a look at that. And they could do that on a quarterly basis. And then if there's any that don't fall under that category, then they could come back to this committee.
Okay. Do you wanna percolate finance into the other committees? I mean, it never hurts. Everybody should always have
I'm just thinking,
an
just
idea.
kind of spread it out a little bit. And,
Right.
not put it all on our backs, or,
Yeah, I mean, everybody in council should have kind of a concept of where we stand financially all the time anyway.
Yep.
So,
just a thought.
what makes our world go round, so. All right, because these are as they are, so,
Would make a motion to recommend to amend the 2022 adopted budget as written, make a recommendation to council for approval.
very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Take your pick, Greg or Ozzy, whichever.
Take your pick.
I heard Greg.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on this one?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben.
So for the Opera House, there was ARPA money in question. It seems like we could, it's going to be paid out of the general fund. Would we be able to basically backfill with ARPA money if we decided to?
Nope, that is not allowed under the program rules. You cannot use ARPA funds to increase your fund balance.
Okay. So is ARPA out of the question to cover this gap, or?
Yes.
Okay, understood.
It's a good question, though.
Yep. All right, any other questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 And are any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that one to council. All right, we'll have to blast through, we've still got several time-sensitive items. Next up is a resolution on street pulverization project contract 1-2023.
I think Mark Fisher is on the line here. He's our engineer.
Correct.
And he can kind of walk us through this quickly, but I don't think there's anything earth-shattering here other than we approved the projects in the CIP, we went out to bid, and Mark can kind of tell us how it all came out.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the first project there, I think Rodney did a great job summarizing the results for each of the contracts. But the first one is the 2023 street polarization project. We had 2 bids. Both were within our budget numbers, within our estimates, and both bids were very close to one another. On a $1.5 million contract, they were about $30,000 apart. So the recommendation is to forward this to council for contract award to Wolf Paving and Excavating.
All right, anybody have,
Motion to recommend to council.
very good, motion by Lisa, is there a second on it?
Second.
Second by Ozzie, he got it this time. Any questions?
I would say that I think some of the supporting documents, I think, are all under the one resolution. They're not under the individual one, so if you're like, oh, why aren't the documents? They're all in there,
Yep.
but they're under the one resolution.
All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that contract, the resolution of contract up to council. Next up is the resolution for the North Street and Bickley Court reconstruction contract 2-2023.
Right, so we opened bids on this contract just last week, and as Rodney indicated in his memo, the bids for this project came in quite a bit over the estimate. So I think the recommendation for this one, although it looks like the city could find the funds to complete the project, Stoughton Utilities, as my understanding, is still reviewing the bids and their budget to see if they could move forward with the project this year. So Rodney's recommendation there is to basically make this award, or make a recommendation of award contingent on Stoughton Utilities being able to proceed with the project. As was mentioned, this is work on North Street between Division Street and Forest Street. It is in the area of a school, so we had a pretty tight time frame on the completion part of the project between mid-June and the end of August. We believe that, along with some of the inflated construction prices, really drove up the prices for this particular project. So if we can't proceed with it this year, we can rebid it for 2024 construction.
It sounded like this one was, for utilities, was fairly complicated.
I wouldn't say really complicated, Mayor. It was a fairly, it had to be completed in a pretty quick time frame. That's probably the biggest thing. I will say some of the sewer got a little deep on this project, so that may have complicated things. But not really complicated, just a real tight time frame on the work.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that they had to take into consideration, and it's one that I think we might have previously approved, was that 4th Street to Isham project. That was one where we received a grant through the MPO. It was part of the Bill's grant from the federal government, and that was one where utilities are kind of going back and forth on that one, but I think they're going to join in because they did some televising work and they saw that their infrastructure was definitely in need sooner than later, and we didn't want to risk putting the road in and then tearing it up. And I think kind of the same thing here. We don't want to go ahead with the city work and then have a utility issue a couple years from now and basically be starting all over again.
Did you say it was contingent on them having the funds or the time? Or
I
both?
think it's the funds, but Mark, did you talk to utilities?
I had an email with them today just confirming that at this point in time, they're leaning towards not proceeding with the work based on budget, not necessarily based on the time frame.
Yeah, so they're still somewhat recovering from the lead service line project, plus they're anticipating work to be done is with the DOT on the 51 corridor project. So they're trying not to overextend themselves, and by not getting a favorable bid, I think that it might make some sense for them to wait on this one. It's not a large stretch of road, is it?
It's just one block, it's about 350 feet of street.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so you can see it's pretty expensive per foot.
Yeah, it really is.
So with the questionableness of Stoughton Utilities on this one, then how would we do that with, how can we recommend it if we know that Stoughton Utilities won't
We
have
can
funds?
recommend contingent on their approval.
Yeah, I don't know if that's 100%, Mark. I didn't talk to him today about it. You know, I suppose they could have a change of heart, but you're gonna have to know sooner than later, I would imagine, so you can decide whether or not we're gonna sign the contract.
That's right. So on this particular one, we do technically have 85 days to award the contract from the time of the bid opening, which again was just last week. But given that we expect the contractor to complete the work between mid-June and the end of August, we probably wouldn't want to wait too long with that official contract award. My suggestion would be to wait till your first meeting in April on this particular contract to see if Stoughton Utilities can make a decision on whether they can proceed by then. And then you can either consider a contract award or actually reject this particular bid.
So you want us to postpone the vote on this?
That would be my recommendation, Mayor.
Okay,
I think we could
Make a
vote
motion to
it,
table
but-
until the April 11th.
But we could wait, or we could just kind of wait to introduce it to council. If we take the time-sensitive bit off of it and not present it tonight, then we present it at the first meeting of the council.
so you're saying make the recommendation and postpone it at council?
Yep,
And
Okay, if you want.
Either way.
recommendation contingent on
yep,
Yeah,
their approval.
right.
Okay. So then the recommendation would be to recommend a council contingent on,
Stoughton Utilities approval.
Right,
want a contingency in there?
yep. We
Okay,
wanted that for
contingent
Stoughton
on the
Utilities' decision.
utilities decision on their half
Approval.
of it.
Yep, and we want to remove it from council's agenda tonight.
Yeah, and then postpone it, yeah,
Yep.
to the 11th.
Yep. Or not remove it.
Second.
Postpone it in council's agenda tonight.
Right, okay.
Because this will have to, it's marked as to
Yeah,
go
and
there.
then when it comes
so
to council tonight, we just
Yep.
postpone it to the
Postpone
11th.
it then. Okay,
I'll
Okay.
second that,
is
Greg.
everybody clear on that? The resolution in
Where's
order
Mike?
to, is going to be contingent on Stoughton Utilities being able to fund their portion of the contract. So we will make the recommendation of it here in this committee to the council tonight, and then postpone the vote on this resolution at council.
okay.
Got it.
It's a little complicated, but I think it'll work all in the timing. And we had,
Not as complicated as my budget amendment.
right, true. We had Greg motion, Lisa second. Any other questions? Did I make that clear as mud?
I'll second it.
Right,
Well, we got a second.
Yeah, I think we already have it.
yep, we're good. All right, any other questions on it? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Are any opposed? Great. We will make the recommendation to council and then postpone. Got it. All right. Next resolution up is Jackson Street Reconstruction Project Contract 3-2023.
All right, bids were open on this contract last week as well. And as Rodney indicated in his memo, the low bid was within the construction estimate. Low bid contractor is Rock Road Companies out of Janesville. This project's a little bit time sensitive too. It has a mid-June start date. So given that this is within budget and within estimate, the recommendation is to award this contract to Rock Road Companies.
All right,
And to recommend to council.
okay, motion by Lisa, is there a
Second.
second? Greg's got it, all right. Any questions on this contract? It's not as complicated as the last one. All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
And are any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that contract up to council, resolution of contract. Next bit up is to adopt tax incremental finance application and update related TIF policy.
This was a case where the city attorney asked for a copy of our current TIF application, and after that, he gave us a recommendation from one of his other municipal clients. We tweaked that application based upon input from both the RDA and Planning Commission. And then the TIF application, or excuse me, the TIF policy is tweaked slightly to conform with the changes that we have in the TIF application.
So basically, we added the language that was highlighted to encourage developers to use, sustainable measures in the development. That just really gives us something else to work with when they're asking for the TIF. We'd like something in return
Right,
where it makes sense.
Lisa?
So I'm good with the application, but I wonder if we can circle back to the policy next meeting, because we had a newer policy from August 25th of 20, and the one that was just drafted cut out a couple of those things, I think inadvertently.
Oh,
So I think it'd be easy to revisit, but given that we're short on time, do they have to be
Well, we put it
together?
time sensitive simply because with the known agenda on April 11th, we were trying to put anything we could on council tonight. But yes, if it's postponed for a meeting or two, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I'd prefer that, because
Okay.
it's sort of inadvertently deleting or changing a current policy. So if we can, I'd move to approve the application, but can we do
Well,
that? Or do we?
the resolution talks about both the application and the policy, so we'd have to kind of tweak the resolution. I guess my suggestion is just have it on the April 11th for both finance and council.
Okay, if it's,
So just make a motion to table this.
okay. I will make a motion to postpone till the April 11th, council and finance.
Second.
Second by Greg. Any questions on what we're doing with that one? We're just gonna delay to get language updated, based on a different, policy copy that's out there. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Are any opposed?
Aye.
All right, we'll see that one again April 11th. All right, next is a resolution to amend 2023 adopted budget for Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Task Force Strategic Plan.
so we had the DEI task force, and as I communicated previously, they're basically recommending that they dissolve and have like a new subcommittee formed under CACP is willing to take that on as a subcommittee. And part of the recommendation was to hire a consultant to help facilitate the process. So in the packet, there's a proposal and a resume for the consultant that everybody seemed to agree that if we were going to move forward in this direction, that would be the person we'd want to contract with. Brett, you were on the committee, the task force the last few months, if you have
Yep.
anything to add.
No, it was, everybody had some great ideas in there, but I think a lot of, we weren't on the same foot at the same time. Everybody was doing some different things in there, but everybody had great ideas into it. But I think that this really puts the whole effort of it under one umbrella, and then everybody's moving in the same direction at once, so.
And we'd be hoping to start, sometime after the reorg. It doesn't really pay to start until we seat, the new members that are on the CACP, because ideally we'd have at least 2 of them that would be on the subcommittee, and then up to 10 community members for a magic number of 12 is what the consultant is recommending.
And I did have, saw an email that I got from Alder Lagaki earlier. She has just a couple of language adjustments maybe for the resolution, but that was about it.
Well, and her proposals were on the DEI, which is a supporting document to the resolution that I drafted, so I'm not sure if she was intending to modify the DEI one, or if she was intending to modify this one.
I'm unclear about. So I think maybe she might have added the language in from the other, or from the CACP resolution, right?
Right.
But this one's different than ours, so,
Correct.
or this one's different than that committee, so
Because I had to put in, getting into
Right.
the budget, so I basically drafted it based upon the language that we had in the DEI committee packet.
yeah.
I
was
think
trying to
both will accomplish the same thing at the end
They
of the day.
will, right. And I was trying to reconcile the language differences, and you're like, wait, these are different, okay. So it doesn't affect our resolution is purely budgetary.
Yep.
All right, the other one has a little bit more flavor into it then. All right, does anyone have any questions about this resolution for appropriating the monies for the facilitator? If not, I'd entertain a motion to recommend to council.
I'll make a motion to recommend to council.
Motion by Ozzy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Greg. Any other questions on this one? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And are any opposed? All right, we will recommend that one to council. Whoops. Here, that.
Final stretch.
We're gonna
I
make
just
it.
had a couple of different PDF documents open. Okay, last thing. I lost my place on my agenda, so I
Oh, it's the write-offs.
okay.
With
yep.
personal property.
Last is the resolution to write off 2021, 2022 delinquent personal property tax bills.
And this is basically an annual thing. Dave's office goes through and collects as much as they can. And then typically there are businesses that are no longer in business, so we deem them uncollectible, so we're just writing them off.
Yep. Anybody have any questions on this one?
Motion to
Move
recommend.
to recommend to council.
Second.
Motion by Greg, second by Lisa. Any questions, further questions on that? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And are any opposed? All right, we will recommend that one to council. Thanks for sticking with it, everybody. We've got a lot of future agenda items, we know that.
Think about that.
we'll get through them, don't worry. I would recommend a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Greg and second by Lisa, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Are any opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
2 minutes to spare.